Tied into Wargames Illustrated 395's theme of Hit the Beach, we had the pleasure of visiting one half of Perry Miniatures, Alan Perry. Once we'd spent far too long exploring the miniatures and scenery in his gaming room, we got him mic'd up to talk in detail about his Aboukir Bay British Invasion of Egypt board, as well as the huge number of miniatures that he sculpted and painted for it.
Okay, we're here in the games room / garage. Well, it's more of a games room really, isn't it, of Alan Perry. And we're here to talk about this impressive board you've got laid out in front of you. So this is the British Invasion of Egypt in 1801.
That's right, yeah.
I mean, tell us a bit about it. How did this project come together and how did you start building it? And
Well, it was really after reading this book, really. I knew about the invasion, but I was really, so it really kicked off when I started reading this quite a few years ago now. I thought I really need to do a range covering this, just really the British part of it and fighting the French, which is just 1801. The broader war, you could include Mamelukes and everything else, and I will do eventually. But this is quite a nice and tight area, and you could do the troops on both sides in a relatively quick time. So I started basically from scratch, without any figures at all. Started building up the British and the French in those slightly weird uniforms.
is there a kind of a process in terms of planning this out? Do you start with just, I want to build this model, or did you start with, I want to make sure I can create this whole scene eventually?
This was in my mind to do this and to do the other battles that occurred after this. So no, it's all in my mind to do. Yeah, I couldn't just stop halfway through. I wanted to do the whole lot if possible.
And do you go into something like this? It sounds almost like this is one maybe where you were asking for it rather than perhaps the audience was asking for it.
Oh, the audience didn't know it was coming.
Yeah, so
I think Mike was quite surprised as well. Think what? Yeah, so this was completely. It's quite a niche within the Napoleonic period. It has been done, I think, a few times before, but not on a particularly grand scale. And luckily, at the time, I was getting quite a lot of information, new information, for the French coming in as well, for a very nice French bloke. And so I was adding little bits of information, little bits of new sort of troop types in. So
you researched this quite thoroughly, I assume, as you were going through the process.
Oh, you have to. Yeah, you really do, because, yeah, you have to. All the ranges, we try and research as much as we can before we start doing anything. But you always slip up. But obviously, when you start doing it, when you start presenting a new range, there nearly always is an expert or two who will contact you, and then he'll actually send you loads of stuff, or they'll send you loads of stuff, and by that point you can't really go too far wrong.
Yes.
You sort of check and double check. That seems to be quite normal.
Right, yes.
Most ranges, yeah.
So is that a good thing about social media being a thing? You can get that information out quite early and get that feedback.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's, I don't think in the 1970s, 80s and sort of even 90s, that would be difficult. You could get a range out, but whether it would be absolutely spot on. Now it's much easier, yeah.
So you actually enjoy that, being that accountable rather than being scared of it? I love doing research as well. Yeah, I do quite a lot of my own research as well as, say, other people sort of sending me stuff. But I do like it. Yeah, sort of probably about 50% of the range is research. Yeah. So I mean, obviously we're going to get into this board and the specifics of it, but when it came to the period and things, what was your jumping off point in terms of where did you start with the sculpts and what path did you take through doing those?
Where did I start off?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I had to start from scratch because the British Army in 1801 looked different to the British Army in the Peninsula, which is only a few years later, but they did look different. They had queues on. They nearly always wore breeches instead of overalls, so the whole look was slightly different. The shako was fairly similar. But the French, they were, in 1801, the French needed a completely new range because the normal uniforms
from the late 18th century wore out within a month of arriving in 1798 in Egypt. So they went through a few different changes of uniform and ended up in 1801 with a varied coloured army of reds and purples and browns and lots of different colours. Yeah, so it's quite a weird uniform and also different headgear as well.
Does that appeal to you then? Because I know you're both quite keen on sculpting the uniforms part of it and getting into that. So that kind of maybe drew you to this period specifically?
Definitely. Yeah, oh yeah, I love the complete randomness of the French army of this period. And as you can probably see, the flags are pretty good as well.
That's true, yeah, they are some good flags. Yeah. Okay, so I mean, in terms of the process for making the models, you're doing the troops, and then you also expanded to do some flatboats as well. I think, are these just about the only boats that you've done for Perry Miniatures that you specifically sell?
Yes, yeah, they are the only boats actually. Yeah, and I mean they're difficult to do, and get all the troops in and everything else. There's 40 figures in each of the boats.
Right.
So on this setup, I think there's 11 boats with troops. So that's 440 figures. Each of the boats actually, in this particular scenario, represents a battalion. In reality, it would be about sort of 20 boats, I think. But it's quite good. So it's about 1 in 20 really, and it works well in the scenario actually. So when one boat hits the beach, a battalion gets out. One battalion.
Right. Very cool. And you said they're quite a challenge to make. In what ways? Is that simply just the volume of bodies that need to be in the boat, or is the boat itself?
Well, the boat itself, I've never made a boat before, and getting the figures in the boats, that was quite a challenge. Yeah, because the boats had to be a certain size, but not too small, not too big. So they're reduced slightly, probably, than they should be, but not much.
Right, yeah. And you've obviously got the rowboat crew as well going on there, so...
Oh, the little cutters at the back.
Yes, the ones.
Yeah, the little cutters at the back are actually they were sent to pick up survivors and those man overboard.
Right. Yes.
If they could. Yeah.
So you said obviously the sculpting was largely your work, but then when it came, yes, sorry, all your work. I don't want to take away.
I'm doing Michael. Yeah.
But then when it came to the next stage of the process, making the terrain and making all the areas around there, and then obviously painting the troops, was that largely you as well, or did you enlist help?
I had to enlist help for that. Luckily, around about the same time, contacted by a very nice Italian painter, Maurizio Amadori. That pronunciation might be wrong, but I think that's about right. And he was luckily up for painting quite a lot of the boats, troops and boats, and as well as the units. Steve May helped, and John Morris did some fantastic jobs as well. But I did probably about a third, I think, of the painting, maybe around about a third. But I do like painting, and when I get time, it's relaxing and everything.
So you didn't have to kind of mentally prepare and really force yourself through this project once you got going on it? The painting part was a pleasure, or? Oh
no, it was definitely a pleasure. Yeah, I mean the boats, after I think I did about 3 of them, after the third one, I think somebody else would do the rest of them. Yes.
And you've got a conversion on, is it just one of the boats that's got the conversion going on?
I can't remember if it's 1 or 2. No, 2 conversions,
yes.
With a small carronade at the front, a small artillery piece at the front of the boat, which they used on the flanks of their particular brigade to help keep the heads down on the French.
I mean, obviously, as a sculptor, those are the kind of things that you can probably bring to your armies easier than most people. But
it's not too much of a. That wasn't too much of a conversion, because the barrels are sort of just actual gun barrels from a kit, one of our kits, but the rest of it is just a little block carriage,
right.
A naval block carriage, so not a lot to them really.
Okay. I mean, obviously, once you decide to take on a project like this, you can't do too many of these in the year or whatever. So,
no.
it's probably difficult to say, but overall, how much time would you say you've put into creating this board, this impressive setup?
Well, the whole range and the board. I think it's about 2.5 years of work to get the range made, and at the same time I was making them, I getting them painted as well, and painting myself, and doing some of the board. Some of these boards were Michael's, he's using the sedan and everything else, but some had to be sort of made, little bits and pieces had to be made. The buildings sort of are sort of bought ones, but yeah. So some bits like the coastline that was made. These are sort of separate pieces, which you sort of slot onto the side of the normal board.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a labour of love to some extent. This
completely,
because as you say, it's not a particularly well-known period of history. It's not one of the biggies. So whilst you will get some reward through selling the models on, at the same time, there's a bit of self-indulgence here, maybe.
Oh, completely, yeah. I mean, I think they sell quite well, but I don't think they're big sellers. But you can use the British for other periods up to about 1806, other naval assaults and that sort of stuff. And the boats sell very well.
I mean, to what extent do you think maybe building something like this and accompanying a range with inspirational, aspirational images of a board such as this actually helps other people get interested in that period?
I think it helps completely, because a lot of the time you can't visualise it. You can see a few paintings maybe, but actually even when I started putting it out, I said, right, yeah, this feels right. Whether it's 100% right, but it feels right. And going by the pictures of the period, it looks about as close as I can get anyway.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we'll talk a little bit about the rules and the way you played this game specifically, but this was actually part of a multi-part series of games that you did, wasn't it?
Yeah. I've played actually this one about 3 times.
We're going to take a breath here, but we'll be back with part 2. In that second part, Alan gets into the tabletop battles he fought around this board, his experiences gaming the British in Egypt. He gives us a tour of the troops of both the British and the French, and he talks about rule modifications he made for the use of boats.
This video has been brought to you by WI Prime, Wargames Illustrated magazine's online members club. View more videos or find out more about WI Prime by following these links.